Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me spend some time with you today. I do appreciate it. It's a kind of a damp, rainy day here in East Tennessee, but that's okay. You got to have the sunshiny days, you got to have the cloudy days, you got to have the rain, right? The other night I had the privilege to teach for Messianic Delaware, and it was a lot of fun. And I started with a couple of definitions, and I'm going to go over them today because I think it's kind of important, because it's something we need to be aware of as we study the Bible, read the Bible, and pretty much you can apply this to a lot of things, right? First definition I'm going to give you is apophenia. That's kind of a fun word, isn't it? It's not a phobia. Okay, don't confuse it with that. It's apophenia. The definition is the tendency to perceive a connection or meaningful pattern between unrelated or random things, such as objects or ideas. That's probably very, very dangerous for a serious Bible student. We want to see connections. We want to see patterns between people and events. And sometimes they're not always connected. There are similarities between Joseph in Egypt and Yeshua, Jesus, but Joseph is not the perfect picture, right? Not everything Joseph did Yeshua, Jesus do. It's just not the perfect picture. Just because there's similarities doesn't mean that it's a foreshadowing or a prefix to something. There's a lot of messianic concepts in the Old Testament, but not everything is. It's that simple. Some things are simply examples of how to live, how to apply the law to your life. The next one is something we get caught up with quite a bit. It's called the confirmation bias. Everybody has their own biases and agendas, but the confirmation bias is defined as people's tendency to process information by looking for or interpreting information that is consistent with their existing belief. See, if we're looking for something that's going to confirm what we think, that is a confirmation bias. If you rule out all the other things, that's a confirmation bias. I often use the phrase, looking through a filter, looking through the glasses. Same thing, confirmation bias. If you're looking for something that's going to confirm a tradition or a church doctrine, denominational doctrine, that's a confirmation bias. Another thing is reading Paul's letters. We can think about it this way. If we've been told, Paul said, well, the law's been done away with. It was nailed to the cross. And that's how we're going to try and interpret his writing. Then we get confused when we read in most of his letters, where he's actually saying, no, you apply it this way. This is how it's supposed to work. And this confirmation bias also comes from our education, doesn't it? Have you ever thought about this? If all we are taught is evolution, like 99% of all colleges and universities today, if all you're ever exposed to is evolution, why would you even consider creation? But 99% of all of our colleges and universities exclude creation and teach specifically evolution. And I get a lot of questions about how I study, what translations I use. But one of the most important things I try to do is not get trapped by either my own confirmation bias or apophenia. And yes, I am susceptible to these things. I don't have any immunity, right? So I need to constantly remind myself. It's just like, you got to take your vitamins every day. You got to eat right every day. You have to constantly remind yourself, stay away from the candy. One piece of pie is plenty, right? You got to constantly remind yourself, don't be looking for things that aren't there. Don't be trying to force things in that aren't there. It doesn't mean that when I have questions, I don't carefully examine each and every connection, right? But if I try to force something that I think should be there and it doesn't fit, well, that's my problem. and I have that to deal with. Thankfully, over the years, I have learned, you go down every rabbit trail, you dig as deep as you can, and you get in there and you just keep looking until every question is answered. And I still have lots of questions. Not every question is going to get answered. I still have lots of questions. There's some warnings that we have in the Bible about what I'm talking about. The confirmation bias and apophenia, seeing things that just aren't there. Isaiah chapter 30, verses 8 through 10. Go, write on a tablet in their presence and inscribe it on a scroll. It will be for the days to come. A witness forever and ever. These are rebellious people, deceitful children, children unwilling to obey the Lord's instructions. They say to the seers, stop seeing visions. To the prophets, do not prophesy us the truth. Speak to us in pleasant words and prophesy illusions. Now, if you are careful and you look back a few verses, you're going to find that it is our Creator telling Isaiah what to speak, what to write, what he's supposed to be saying. Kind of scary, isn't it? That's exactly what's going on today. And then if you look at Jeremiah chapter 5, verses 30 through 31, a horrible and shocking thing has happened in the land. The prophets prophesy falsely, and the priests rule by their own authority. My people love it so, but what will you do in the end? Now that sounds exactly like something that Jeremiah was told to say, doesn't it? What will you do? I don't know what you're going to do, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The prophets prophesy falsely, and the priests rule by their own authority. Now, that didn't just happen during the Second Temple period. That's happening today in our modern Christian churches. So is it any wonder that Paul would write to Timothy in his second letter, for the time will come when men will not tolerate sound doctrine, but with itching ears they will gather around themselves teachers to suit their own desires. To suit our own desires. We want, I can say it this way. We want what we have been taught by the people that we trust to be true, right? But sometimes it's only a partial truth. And a partial truth is in fact a lie. Don't believe me? How about this example? If I say God created the heavens and the earth, that's absolutely true. But if I don't stop there and I continue to say he used millions of years to do so, it would be a partial truth because only part of the statement is true. And because of that, it would be a lie. God did create the heavens and the earth, but he did so in 6 days. That's according to the biblical truth. So what happens if we apply this same reasoning to traditions? And I'm going to use Christmas for one major reason. Okay? It's November, and you're going to start hearing Luke chapter 2 being recited over and over and over again. The problem is Luke's gospel, we really shouldn't call it his gospel. We should call it something else, because Luke is getting his information from some other people, right? More on that in a second. We know he's getting it at least from Paul and at least from Mark. We don't know who else. We don't have that information. And there's another issue that we have to deal with. Paul tells us in his letter to the Colossians that Luke is not counted among the Jews. He names the Jews who are with him in prison, and then he says, oh, by the way, Luke the physician and Darius send their greetings. Luke wasn't a he wasn't familiar with things that he should have been familiar with, like the feasts, right? He's getting these accounts from Hebrew people. Well, Paul was from Benjamin. Mark, I believe he was from Judah. If I remember right, don't hold me to that. Could be wrong. But he's getting his accounts from somebody else. He wasn't there. By his own admission, Luke writes in Luke chapter 1, many have undertaken to compose an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us by initial eyewitnesses and servants of the word. Therefore, having carefully investigated everything from the beginning, it seemed good also to me to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the certainty of the things you have been taught. Now, we don't know who Theophilus is. There's a couple of different theories about it. Both are adequate. It could go to either theory, but that's fine. But Luke tells us, he's not getting this. He didn't see it. He didn't witness it. He has to rely on someone else to tell him what happened. But he's unfamiliar with the language, the culture, and the history. So he's at a bit of a disadvantage here, right? He's at a bit of a disadvantage. And as much as we might want the birth of Yeshua, the birth of Jesus, to be on December 25th, there's nothing in the entire biblical narrative to give us any indication he would have been born in December. There's nothing. Nothing's there. We hear the Christmas story, and just about everyone that tells it from the Christian point of view is going to lead up to December 25th. And we're hearing exactly what we want to hear, because that's the tradition. That's what we've been taught. People that we have trusted have ingrained in us. It's December 25th. It wasn't December 25th. It could have been any other day of the year almost, but it wasn't. And it certainly wasn't December 25th. We're hearing what we want to hear. Our itching ears are being tickled by false teaching, right? Now, I'm not going to go into the details of when Yeshua would have been born. If you want more on that, go to authorjerrymitchell.com. Check out the books. Not every detail is given in there either, and that's for a reason. You need to do some research on your own, okay? Do some research on your own. When someone speaks a partial truth, the entire statement becomes a lie. When a tradition includes a partial truth, the entire tradition becomes a lie. Even if we want it to be true, and we look for ways, we try to justify it, we do the best we can, it doesn't make it true. Doesn't make it true. Not at all. So the next time you read or hear Luke chapter 2, try to remember what you're reading, what's being told is from the viewpoint of someone outside the original language, culture, and history of the Hebrew people. I made the statement the other night that Luke is writing much like an investigative reporter would write. He wasn't there. He didn't see these things in person. He's getting this information from eyewitnesses, but he's getting it many, many, many years later. Many years later. People have a tendency to, I don't want to say exaggerate, maybe embellish the truth a little bit. They see things the way they see them. They tell things sometimes the way they want it to have been. So we need to take that into account. Now, while Luke has been considered an expansion of Mark's gospel, probably because he got most of what he knows from Mark. It is his own. He investigated. He's the one who asked the questions. He's the one who became the investigative reporter and wrote down the accounts. Now, later in Acts, it's firsthand knowledge. And you can kind of tell where that changes. It doesn't mean that Luke was wrong by any stretch of the imagination. He's writing down what he was told. But because he's not that familiar with the language, the culture, and the history, he's writing it from the viewpoint of an outsider looking in, a reporter who wasn't there to witness the events. Doesn't mean he was wrong. But it may very well mean that we are interpreting what he's saying wrong because we are attempting to force our confirmation bias, our apophenia into the narrative itself. So, like Myra likes to say, and she says this often, just read the words. Don't force anything into it. Let the words that you're reading, the words that you're hearing, as you hear the Bible read, the passages read from whatever translations, plural, many, as you can get hold of, so you can see the differences. And let them guide you. Don't try to guide the Bible. Let it guide you. That's just something to think about until next time. And until next time, I do wish you many, many blessings, everyone.